For Crema Media's Polity, I'm Sane Dlamini. Veteran journalist Greg Ardé is in conversation with Polity about his book titled War Party, How the ANC's Political Killings Are Breaking South Africa. So, Greg, in the book, you start off by talking about Swisson Kabinde. We know that the guy was killed more than 20 years ago, and he was implicated in a lot of political killings, if I may say so, in KZN's Richmond area. Why did you find it necessary to go back decades and discuss him at this time in our history?
I was curious, and I wanted to, because the Richmond story had been so central to violence at some point in KZN, I wanted to revisit it and to see how much had changed in Richmond. Of course, more recently, there had been 3 killings of 3 councillors in Richmond and the town, the CEO, and our wanted to see what the connection between the past, if any, between the past and the present.
And while you were in Richmond, I know that you met his family, you met his wife, and you also met his son. Can you please tell us about that interaction?
Yeah. Well, what was so remarkable was to go back to Magoda and to visit a place that I had covered so extensively so many years ago, and it was in stark contrast, the picture. Whereas when you went there previously, the height of violence, there were army vehicles and police vehicles, and it was really tense, and you couldn't move around freely, and yet when I went back 20 years later, riding down the road to Kabinde's house was easy, and there was no apparent threat. And yet, unfortunately, this was the same place that was being revisited by violence, but a different type of violence. It's really typical of what's happening now. It's targeted assassinations versus, wholesale warfare, for want of a better description. So there's this facade of peace and quiet, but there's still murder happening behind the scenes. And
also in your book, it was interesting to read that you covered extensively. I think you also were with Ayanda at the time, covering the looting of the municipality in Newcastle. Can you tell us more about this episode?
Yeah, sure. So the violence in Newcastle is so concerning, like it is anywhere else. But mining the story and delving into the story, you realize that the killings and corruption is so inextricably linked, and the decay and collapse of municipal services it's obviously interconnected, and it's really quite sad to see what was quite a vibrant town, Newcastle, being faced with the challenges that it was. I mean, just on a service delivery level, people were, the Eskom was threatening when we visited. Eskom was threatening to cut off the electricity, and there were just these stupid vanity projects and countless examples of wasteful expenditure, which you would see in any other municipality, I suppose, but it's symptomatic of what's happening.
And you've also talked about the killing or the assassination of the youth leader Sindiso Makaka in Umzimkhulu in KZN, as he was trying to uncover corruption. As you've just said, that many municipalities are dealing with the same thing. But what do you know about his death and the related arrest, as well as the subsequent release of Mluleki Ndoba? Now, who was the mayor at the time, and now who's the KZN legislature's deputy speaker.
You know, the most astounding thing about, well, there are many awful things in that story, obviously Lisa Makaka, but, you know, when you go to Mzimkhulu and you see this memorial hall, so it's so heartbreaking, really, to think that that 3 or 4 people may have been killed as a result of this stupid boondoggle. I mean, you go and see this memorial hall, and it's a ridiculous edifice, and that you know, there was a massive tender awarded on, and overinflated tenders, and you know, more spending to apparently fix it up and whatever, and you know, a lot of the violence in Mzimkhulu killings is related to whistleblowing around that, and it's just a monument to, it's just an awful monument and a tragic monument to corruption. It's you know, this building is in tatters. The service delivery is really poor in the town, and you just like, and you think to yourself, did people die for that? You know, it's just it's spine chilling, actually. It's just awful, yeah.
And from your book, it appears that you were able to get access to like chilling and scary, if I may say so, information from certain sources who were obviously in the political parties that were linked to violence. How did you get your sources to confide in you, as well as them to reveal such sensitive information?
So yeah, I'd say it's just down to like gumboot journalism, basically going from one place to the next, spending time with people, and you know, winning their confidence over time. A friend of mine, a very accomplished journalist, his name is Sam Sol, he said something that I will never forget. He said, good journalism is the product of time, and it can be exhausting at times, and you feel like you're going down so many dead ends, and often you are, but then occasionally you're rewarded when somebody says, you know, check that, and it's the journey of checking that and meeting people and winning their confidence. Yeah, it's I find it absolutely absorbing.
And it was disappointing to read that despite concrete evidence, that there are many cases that have been gathering dust over the years. For example, you talk of the Moerane report on the Shobane massacre, that was about the killings between the ANC as well as the IFP. Why do you think there is no action on such reports?
It's hard to say, Sonny, but I think it's just down to the fact that there's not enough will. You know, at some level, there's a whole lot of hand-wringing over the killings, and the fact that the government has even instituted commissions shows a concern, and so the concern might be there, but it's the will to do something about it. And I think the ANC is unfortunately too full of vested interests, or the goodwill that there is in the ANC would play out, and we would find, you know, we would nail the murderers and put them behind bars and live in peace. But it's oversimplified, but you know, that's how it feels.
And Greg, you also met Vanessa, who was also involved in a lot of ways, if I may say, with the Cleveland's killing in Hostel in KZN. I think the hostel is in Umlazi. What were you able to uncover about those killings? Because I remember a lot of people died in that hostel.
Well, Vanessa really is the font of wisdom in respect of the hostels, and really the chapter in my book that relates to the hostels relies heavily on Vanessa. And but I suppose what the story is that's not so widely known is just how violent that world is, and how I find it an awful indictment of the ANC's rule. You have these awful slums that, in spite of repeated promises and commitments to upgrade, just remain an awful place for people to live, and a violent place. And children grow up there, and exposed to hideous violence. And I just wanted to include that story in the book, because it's kind of representative of the disdain that the ruling party has. I mean, because sure, there's like great commitments in public to do things like improve housing and services, and yet if you go and see what's happened at Glebe, people are living in squalor, and linked to that is a lot of contestation for power, and so that's why the Glebe story, while it's only one hostel of many, is important, I believe.
And the ANC has been involved in a lot of corruption, but we've seen them being successful at the polls. What is your comment on that, Greg?
I suppose many people don't seem enough of an option to the ANC, and I suppose it's hard to sort of to rationalize it, other than to say that for all the evil that exists in the ruling party, and there's no shortage of it, there's also I was struck anyway by the number of good people in the party, in the ANC still, who are like lonely voices, and really courageous lonely voices, and whistleblowers who refuse to go away, and who consistently hold the party that they love to account. So yeah, but I mean, I don't know when sort of general sentiment around the ANC is going to change. It certainly is. They're not enjoying a public favor at the moment, and for good reason.
And lastly, Greg, if you would encourage our viewers of Polity to read your book, what will they learn from reading the book, apart from what we've discussed?
So now I think what I've done is tell a story in hopefully an accessible way about the stories that don't really make the headlines. A story that myself and only a few other journalists and researchers are privy to, and it's a story that's full of foreboding. I think if this sort of thing keeps on happening, and it amplifies across the country, then we really are in serious trouble. And I just hope that all civic-minded South Africans who are readers will read the book and will be encouraged to take some sort of civic action, and however small, to hang on to democracy.
That was Greg Ardé speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about his book titled War Party: How the ANC's Political Killings Are Breaking South Africa.